You there?
If that son of a bitch thinks that he's more of a... Oh, it gets me going. All right, I'm ready.
Welcome to Degos on 3, hosted by Sonny and the Murph, podcasting since 2012. Join us for 1 hour and 3 topics: family, sports, and entertainment. So listen in as you mow your lawn, drive to work, or are grinding at the gym. How's your team going to do this year? What games you playing? Got any crazy family stories you want to share? Grab that drink of choice. It's time.
Welcome to another edition of Degos on 3. I am your host, Sonny. With me, as always, in studio, but not in the same location, in the same country, I think, is my good friend and cousin co-host, Murph. Murph, or Josh, depending on which side of my brain I'm talking to you with. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, coming to you live from the Dego Dungeon South. That's right. We're worldwide. Well, at least nationwide.
Yeah, nationally.
We're national. Yeah. We cover the majority of 2 states, or 1 city in 2 states, or maybe just a couple neighborhoods. But either way, thank you for joining us here for another episode of Degos on 3.
We are coast to Mid-East, right?
Yeah, I meant to mention something to you. Last time we were on the air, when we did the inaugural episode of Degos on 3, you referred to me as being a salesman in the Midwest. The people of Nashville, Tennessee would certainly take umbrage by not saying that we are certainly in the South.
Or Mid-East. Nashville's kind of up. It does. I know it's South because of the way y'all talk out there, but it always seems like it's more Middle America than it seems Southern America.
Well, Nashville's a pretty progressive city. I mean, we're not, Greenville, Mississippi or nothing down there in the Delta. But, we're south of Kentucky, and Kentucky would certainly be part of the South, or the Virginias, and we're kind of parallel with, the Carolinas. So, I mean, we are definitely in the South, even as much as though Nashville has become, as you know, after visiting it quite a few times, it's kind of a hip place. Like, it's not a, it's a big town with a small town feel,
Well, Josh, as much as I love to hear your geography lessons, 101 on Degos on 3, we have 3 topics to get to, and we're going to get to those right now. Okay? That'll be the intro to Dr. Death.
Well, no, it would have been good if you would have said in our first segment of the night.
Oh, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that right now. Okay, ready? Here we go.
You're making work for me now every time that we do that. Because we're going to do this as a rolling start, so I'm not going to edit any of this out. So go ahead.
In our first segment tonight, we reached out to an old friend. Many people know him as Dr. Death, a super fan for the Oakland Raiders. But we know him as Ray, one of our friends and fellow fan of the Raiders and fellow brother of Raider Nation. Me and Josh, long time, basically our whole lives, have been Raider fans, and Ray shares that same passion for the Raiders, and he's front and central with the stadium issues that are going on in Oakland. And since me and Josh moved out of the Bay Area, we wanted to bring him on to talk more about the stadium things and what's going on down there. So please welcome our good friend, Ray. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. This is Sonny with my co-host, Murph, and in studio is a special guest. His name is Ray Perez. He is known as Dr. Death, a super fan from the Oakland Raider Nation. And I'd like to welcome him into the studio today. Ray, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Having me. I so appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for having me on.
Ray, we appreciate you being here. A lot of conversation about the Raiders over the last few months. Not just what's going on the field. I just read yesterday they're one of the top teams in Madden to play this year. Some people are predicting them to be in the playoffs. But a big thing is about even where they're going to play next year and the years to come. So we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But first off, Murph, What are we starting out with today for Ray?
Well, once again, thanks for joining us here. Good to talk to you again. Let's just start off for the beginning. Tell us a little bit about why you're such a diehard super fan, how Dr. Death, how the moniker came to be, just kind of an origin of not only yourself as a fan, but also this persona that you take on game days.
Yeah, so basically, I've been a Raider fan pretty much, since birth, but I remember about, 5, 6 years old, being in my dad's little small apartment. He had Raider paraphernalia everywhere. And then finally, when I was about 7, 8 years old, he took me to my first Raider game at the Coliseum. And, I'm high-fiving just random strangers, and just the atmosphere was just out of this world. To me, as a kid, it was better than Disneyland. And I have visited Disneyland several times with my grandparents. And I told my dad, I want to come back again, but I want to be just like the guys that are dressing up, like the Violators and the late hardcores and the Tuzaks and all them. And my dad said, okay, but you have to be unique. You have to be different. And then as I grew older, 10, 11, 12, I started painting my face, but it wasn't until I was like in my early, 21, 22, when I actually solidified my getup. I got my name from when Jack Tatum passed away, and they were talking about him and the late Skip Thomas, Dr. Death on ESPN. And when they mentioned Dr. Death, I said, that's the name that I want. And it just so happens that's the same season, I believe, that I met the late Skip Thomas's son, Alonzo, and we got to chit-chat, and he gave me his blessing. And then at that same time, also I met the Guerrillas and the Violators that I always seen as a little boy, and they all told me this is more than just being a fan. This is a way of life, but you have a platform that you can help not just yourself, but you can help others. Doing charity events, standing up for what you believe. And as we all know with the whole Lake Stadium saga, I said, you know what, I want to be involved in my community, and I want to be involved as a Raider fan. I want to take my platform and show, hey, look, we want to show civic pride, because when teams start, they start representing from their community, like the Giants do in New York and the Vikings do in Minnesota. And I want to stand up for the Raiders, and I use my platform for who I am, as well as with the different charities that I do, the podcasts that I do. And that's where I think I've gotten to get more recognized, more recognition, is everything that I'm involved with as a Raider fan, but most importantly, how I integrate Dr. Death into what I'm involved with. And I think that's where I get a lot of my notoriety from. And it started out from when I was a little boy, just painting up, to where I am now at 28 years old.
Ray, that's awesome. I remember I was born in 79. I think the first word out of my mouth outside of father was Raider. I knew who Kenny Stabler was when I was in kindergarten. I knew who Fred Biletnikoff was. I knew who Cliff Branch was. I grew up on those old school Raiders, even though it was the 80s. My dad just made sure I knew who those guys were. And so, ironically, the last game me and my dad and Murph went to was actually the last game that Al Davis attended. It was against the Jets. And I think, Murph, what was that, 2012?
2012 against the Jets.
2012 against or 2011, I think, actually. Yeah, it was 11. Anyway, so with the stadium stuff, and I'm up here in Oregon. Me and Josh, we try to go to a game once a year. It costs money. We're diehard fans. Is there a division amongst Raider fans now, with maybe those who want the team to stay in Oakland versus those who not so much don't care, but will just be a Raider fan regardless, and maybe aren't close enough to the situation? Is there a division starting to happen?
There is absolutely a division, but I think it stems from a misunderstanding. I don't even say misunderstanding, but it's kind of like this, right? If hypothetically, if I was a fan of the Knicks, right? Because let's say I lived here in Sacramento, and they're trying to move the Knicks to another state. I may say, look, I'm a Knicks fan either way. They don't really affect me geographically, but it may affect the culture of the sports culture in New York. I'm not going to bash any New York Knicks fans in New York saying, you're just a city fan, because, like, I live here in Sacramento. I'm not a Kings fan, but I do not want the Kings to leave for a variety of reasons. And, the culture in Sacramento, with the jobs that they provide, the fan base. And I think some Raider fans, no matter where they're at, not all, but there's some who just say, hey, you're just a city fan. And I'm not going to say, well, you're not a real fan because you don't live here. That's not what I'm saying is if you don't live here, you may not understand what it has on us. And here's the thing. I'm watching the Rams right now. If I'm a St. Louis Rams fan right now, I would have a very hard time watching the Rams on TV right now, because I would just feel abandoned. Now, do I expect everybody to understand where I'm coming from? No. But the reality of it is, then you guys are on social media. It has caused a division, but up to a point, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. People are going to say whatever they want, but that's just what I have to say about that.
So, you mentioned the Rams, and they're obviously the most recent example of a team relocating. It's an unfortunate part of the NFL that teams relocate, whether it be the Browns or it was the Colts, or here we have the Rams, and unfortunately our Raiders now twice, once to LA and once back, and then potentially here even a third time. Do the team owners have any obligation to the fan base, and really should we as a fan even have an expectation of an obligation to that particular fan base? Because it seems that time and time again, if the NFL ownership group has proven anything to us, it's that their loyalty is to the dollar, and it's not to the fan base. And I don't even necessarily know if that's an evil thing. I know that as a fan, it sucks. I mean, as Sonny mentioned, I mean, we grew up in the Bay Area. We are diehard Raider fans, and of course we want them to remain in Oakland. But there's also a part of me that understands too that this is a business, and they're going to chase the money. And a guy like Mark Davis, he just wants a stadium. So it really doesn't matter to him if it's in Oakland or if it's in Sacramento or if it's in San Antonio or Las Vegas. It doesn't matter. Wherever he's going to get community support to build a new stadium, that's all he's worried about. So what do you say to that? Does ownership, one, have that obligation? And two, should we have that expectation as a fan base for that?
Well, I mean, this is a great question that I think involves several components. And I think there should be certain standards that each respective owner has to meet, right? But the culture is also the tone of the culture is also set by the NFL. And one culture that I don't like what the NFL has set is that there's leniency for owners to leverage public money against the stadium, like what the Browns did in Cleveland and what the Colts did in Indianapolis. We should never subsidize We should never publicly subsidize billion-dollar stadiums for billionaires. That should never happen. Now, I hear that a lot. It's a business thing. So not to you guys in general, but anybody who says it's a business thing, what kind of business sense does it make leaving one of the richest areas in the world to go to an isolated desert island that is built on people losing fortunes? That just makes absolutely no business sense. LA, I mean, I can understand that. I still don't think it's going to work. I think the Rams have a very big hurdle to get over, even them going back to LA. But it's really the culture that I think it's set by the NFL. Now, here's the thing. What kind of support does a respective team get from their respective fan base? So yes, the only thing that the fans should expect is what they get back. Are they giving support, and are they getting something back? And what type of return on investment are you getting as an owner? And with Mark Davis, he doesn't have clout, and he doesn't have money to get anything done. So my thing is what many people say is, well, Mark just doesn't have the money. Then he shouldn't be an NFL owner. If you can't meet the standards of what the NFL sets, that you have to have money, you have to have clout, you have to be able to run your business without the help of a government municipality, if you can't meet those, you can't be an NFL owner. So I think in the end, really, it comes down to the NFL and it's setting the tone on what it takes to be an NFL owner and what it takes to build a stadium. And I hope I was able to be clear on that. If I'm missing anything, let me know.
Sure, no, but I guess my follow-up question would be this, is that he doesn't not have any money. He just doesn't have enough to self-finance his own stadium. And I think that if he was when you got $400 million in the bank, you got plenty of money, but he doesn't have $2 billion in the money. He's not Stan Kroenke, to where he can finance his own stadium. He needs somebody to help him do that. And so I'm not sure if by that, bank account, if that disqualifies him to be an owner, but you're definitely right in as far as the clout goes. But I don't know if that's his fault either. And the reason I say that is that if anybody knows this, living in California, you know what it's like out there with the EPA regulations. And I mean, getting a stadium built in the state of California is, practically an impossible task. I just don't know how many opportunities there are out there for a guy like Davis. I mean, I've heard a few ideas floated out about building a smaller stadium and things like that, but that's not, the Shield doesn't want that. The NFL doesn't want that. They want somewhere where they can host a Super Bowl, where it can, they can seat 80,000 people and 100,000 for a Super Bowl. So I don't know if we could necessarily disqualify Mark Davis just on that aspect. But I understand your point. He's got a point though as well, don't you think?
No, not at all. Not even close. So here's the thing, right? And now let me admit this. When Mark Davis first took over, I was a huge Mark Davis fan, actually. I was like, man, here's this guy. He hasn't really been in here for a really long time. He was just given a football franchise. And at that time, he had the opportunity to say, look, I know what I don't know. We've heard that, right, guys? I know what I don't know. And he brought on Reggie. And now a few years later, now this team is looking like it's on the rise, right, in terms of football operation on the field. But when it came to stadium stuff, he didn't hire anyone. You know what he did? He brought on Carmen Policy for another market. He brought on Adelson for another market. But who did he bring on here in the Bay Area? He promoted Mark Badane, who's now the president, to head football operations. Last I checked, Mark Badane doesn't have any experience in building any type of stadium. And he brought up the 49ers. Do you know what Jed York did to get that stadium built? He went door to door in Santa Clara, made his face present, had players come out. They went to several city hall meetings. There was a resident in Santa Clara who was a Cowboy fan and told Jed, I am not going to support the stadium. You know what Jed did? He got Jerry Jones on the phone at that moment and had Jerry Jones tell that resident, I support the stadium, you should too. And then you look at Mark Davis. You know how many city council meetings we've gone to pass EIRs, ENAs, almost $90 million worth of city legislature? The Raiders weren't present at any of them. But yet they go to Carson where they failed. They will go to Vegas where they're about to fail. So I can easily make the argument that Mark Davis has not acted in good faith. And let me ask you guys this question. You think that if Jerry Jones or Stan Kroenke owned the Raiders, they'd be going through the same political problems as Mark Davis? Me, I very much doubt that.
One question I have for you, Ray, is Al Davis in his day was one of the best owners I think the NFL's ever seen. He's responsible to a certain degree for the NFL even existing how it is today. First guy to hire a black coach, Tom Flores. We all know the history, right?
Right.
But his later years, he really did some hiring of Javon Walkers, if you will, drafting Jamarcus, which Jamarcus Russell was a consensus number 1 overall. But he wasn't his old crafty self later on. One of the questions I always have, and not that I want to give Mark a get out of jail free card here, but how much of his problems are from his father? And Al died, and we all revere him, and don't ever say anything against him. That's the legend, and by all means he still is that guy. But he screwed the Raiders the last 10 years of his existence, if you will. How much of Mark's problems now and Reggie's problems are stemming from Al, and how much of maybe Mark's angst against Oakland, because it sounds like there is, stem from Al's relationship with Oakland as well?
Look, here's the thing. Did he inherit some problems from his dad? Definitely. But it's kind of like this. When you get elected as president of the United States and the guy before you sucked, then by the end of your 8th year, you can no longer say, well, it's the president before me's fault. Dude, you've been on the watch for 8 years. At what point can we start holding you accountable? Mark, after the end of this year, will be going on his 6th year since his father has passed away. And again, in that 5-year span, the 49ers have built a new stadium and have hosted a new stadium, whether people like it or not. And it was 99% privately financed. You have a lot of resources here in the Bay Area. And even with a new stadium, with 2 new stadiums being built in the last 15 years, there is a wealth of resources for Mark. So he can only use that daddy excuse for so long. He was able to do the on-field issues where, he was He brought on a GM, something his dad never did. They started drafting smartly. They started, adding we have a lot of depth now. But he's not translating that to off the field. I'll give you an example, right? If you guys look at training camp, if you turn on NFL Network and you see training camp across the United States, look at all the 31 other teams, or about 30 of them. They all have something we don't. And that's sponsorships on our practice jerseys. That's millions of dollars being missed out on. Is that the city of Oakland's fault? Or is that Al Davis's fault? Or is that Mark Davis's fault? We don't even have Raider Nation celebration since 2012 that can be put on for free. You can bring in food vendors. You can have Uber or Clorox have sponsorships all over this gargantuan of a parking lot that we have, but the Raiders don't capitalize on that. That's not the city of Oakland's fault. That's the lack of business acumen. Go take a peek at the Raiders' worth on Forbes magazine. I have news for everybody. The Shield only sells itself to us Raider fans. It doesn't sell itself to other corporations that see our organization that is constantly moving and is always in litigation. We blame Al. We blame the city of Oakland. At some point in time, we need to start looking and hold Mark Davis accountable. Stop with the excuses. Like someone once told me, only losers make excuses.
So is it so much that he's inept, or does he want to get out of Oakland?
He's inept. Okay, here's the thing, right? And I say this over and over again. Can we both agree that Oakland is not mutually exclusive from the Bay Area? That Oakland is the Bay Area. Can we agree with that?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So, okay, so Mark has failed in the fifth largest market in the nation. What on earth makes you think he's going to do well in a desert island where its economy is based on people going there to lose their money? What Mark is doing is yes, he's inept. What he's done is he is outsourcing all his financial risk onto other people. And if you look at Stan Kroenke and look how he got the Rams to LA, polar opposites. He started out in 2013. He had one site only. It was his money. He didn't rely on a third party like a Goldman Sachs. That was all him. And he kept quiet. He didn't visit anywhere. No one hardly knew anything what he was doing until the vote came down. If you look at Mark and how he's acting with his business, it's polar opposite from Kroenke. So to answer your question, he's very inept.
So let me ask you, and here's my last question. We'll be coming up against the clock here in just a few minutes, but I did want to ask this, and this kind of comes back to my original question about obligation of ownership. We are fans, okay, and fan is short for fanatic, okay. We have an inability to think rationally when it comes to our football team because it means all the things that you talked about growing up and being with our dads. And should we have a reasonable expectation of him or any ownership that they're going to have any reason to keep their team in a geographic location based on that? You mentioned numerous times they have incredible fan support in the city of Oakland and in the Bay Area. Of course the Raiders do, but that's not where NFL teams make their money. You and I both know that. They make it on TV. They make it on contracts. They make it on shared revenue. All that that's supplied by the NFL, that's where they make their money. So if he goes to the desert, okay, where there's not a built-in fan base, but there's built-in money, I think it would be a disservice to the rest of Raider Nation to feel like there wouldn't be that support because people wouldn't go to Vegas to go see him play, from around the country or even around the world for that matter, and then fit in Vegas as part of that trip. So I guess what I'm saying is that again, should we have a reasonable expectation? Take our emotions out of it because we're emotional, because we're fans. Take the emotion out of it. Should we have, whether he's capable, inept, whatever, should we have an expectation that he's going to do his best to keep him in Oakland, or does he just want to go where he's going to have the money and where he's going to have a facility?
Short answer, absolutely yes. People like me, like when you go to Raider games, right? Do you get free tickets? I don't get free tickets, because if you do, hook them up. And that Mount Davis that you see was paid for by taxpayer dollar. And all those people that you see going to Raider games, we don't go there for free. We go there to pay to see a product. let me tell you something. If Uber sucked or Clorox or any of these corporations sucked, people would stop buying their product. But because we live in a culture where football is it's bigger than just a sport, right? And majority of these teams are built, of course, something that you can't monetize, something you can't measure, and that's civic pride. Each respective city or each respective team is founded on its respective city and its identity. Then also comes with the fans and how much they have supported you. Because, yes, they do live off TV revenue, and that's how the NFL makes their money. But if that's the case, okay, imagine if you're 13 4 years in a row and people stop showing up to your games and you get 5,000 a game. You can't tell me that the NFL is going to be okay with that.
Yeah, but let's not pretend though that the Raiders are
supporting.
Let's not pretend the Raiders are selling out everything like crazy. Let's not pretend there's not tarps there on top of Mount Davis. Let's not pretend that there hasn't been 30,000 people at home games, because we've all seen that firsthand. That look, there's when the Raiders are on the upswing right now, thankfully, and so the attendance is going.
And you think that would have been better in Vegas? You think that would have been better at Vegas with no face of the franchise in Vegas and going 2-14 with Jamarcus Russell?
I'm telling you though that Vegas is a destination city and that you can model an entire trip around it. Oakland is not a destination.
What happens with the next economic downturn?
I don't know. What impact did the economic downturn have last time? What was the casino attendance?
They suffered tremendously, and not only that, but a lot of houses have been up for sale, and that economy suffered because they rely on transients. When people don't have money, they're not going to go travel and then spend even triple what they would on a hotel because an NFL franchise is there. And half the people that go there, do your casinos really want fans in a stadium for 3 hours and leave their casinos empty when Vegas has made their fortunes on alcohol and casinos and gambling? I just cannot see.
No, because there'll be slot machines.
Yeah.
You think they're going to allow slot machines in an NFL stadium?
It'll be legal.
Hey, Ray, one last thing, man. I appreciate you coming on. Very informative. I love your passion. I want them to play in Oakland, but I mean, gosh, it's just such a nightmare. One thing we don't see, I know you basically through social media, a lot through Twitter. Something happened, I think it was this year, where what we saw, basically, and I'm speaking we as in social media, how we are connected, we saw a fan yelling at Mark Davis to sell the team. On one hand, it's passionate, it's anger, it's frustration, it's standing up for what you believe in, and it's awesome. There have been others who have ridiculed it, who have spoken down on you, and really said some unnice things. What did we not see from that small video clip? Because we only seen 30 seconds. What happened that day? What was going on within you to make you want to do that, to have that much passion?
This is a really good question. I do appreciate you guys asking me this question, and I want everybody to know that this is a really good dialogue. I definitely appreciate the good dialogue that we're having. Now, in terms of your question, if I was a staunch Mark Davis fan, like when I mentioned earlier in this interview, because he's got handed this pro franchise and he has the opportunity to find his resources, hand the responsibility over to someone else, kick back, watch this franchise grow in the matter of 5 years, both on and off the field, and get credit for it. That's the man's man. I would love that. And you guys can search this on YouTube. I brought about 150 Raider fans to Raiders headquarters about 2 yeyears ago. And it was about 150 of us. We had a big sign that says, "We love the Davis family." And I told Mark to his face, I said, "Mark, what we're going to do is we're going to sell out for you. We're going to try to sell as many tickets as we can. And by doing that, there's many groups in Oakland that sell tickets through nonprofit organizations. We went to those groups and we said, if you can, those people that you sell single game tickets to have them buy season tickets instead. And it's not something we just broadcast on social media, but that's what we did in our community. Second, I promised Mark, I said, Mark, any type of legislature that you need, we are going to go to City Hall and we're going to do that for you. And Mark says, absolutely, I'm going to try my best to stay here. We need to do this together. What we ended up doing, now we're on a season ticket waiting list. We went to City Hall several times and said, we need to get things done. We passed the EIR, the ENA. I've seen many of my speeches. The Raiders did not show up to any of them. Then the city of Oakland has outspent the Raiders by almost $100 million in terms of land and environmental impact reports. And then we see Mark Davis going to Carson and having Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders, put a pin on Mayor Robles' lapel and said, we really want to come here, while telling us we're really trying, but you don't spend a dime here. You don't go to any of our town hall meetings, but yet you're lying to us. And we go to your headquarters and we say, go Mark Davis, we really support you. And after lying to us, at what point do I say, you know what, enough is enough? I didn't curse at Mark. I didn't call him names. We've spent thousands of dollars on PSLs and season tickets. I said, you know what? That's enough. You have used us. We are not a cult anymore. And it wasn't just my idea. There was many people that were there that you didn't catch on camera that says, you know what? I wish Mark would just sell the team. Some have said, you know what? I even wonder if Al is even buried down the street. You know, we're so big on Al Davis, like he's almost godly to us, that you want to take this franchise away from him. Then I just blew it. You know, 3 years just went going through my mind. I said, I'm pissed off now, because if any other organization did this to their customers, they'd be writing letter of complaints. But you know what? Okay, if I write an email to Mark Davis, it gets thrown in the trash. If I go something on social media, no one bats an eye. I had to go do something. It caught someone else's attention, and people were like, you yelled at an empty building. Oh, but you heard about it, right? If it was so empty, how do you know about it? In this day of social media, there's this thing called video. And there were people there. You want to know why? Because I was there. I also know that they heard me because I got some phone calls from the Raiders after that. I'm not going to get into what the phone calls were about, but I don't regret it at all. And unless people are in my shoes, they don't get it at all.
Ray, I appreciate your passion, and I say this with respect. It's like you're still that little kid, and they're trying to take your favorite toy away. And it's awesome how much you stand up for it, how much you fight for it, and I respect that tremendously. Real quick. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I just want to say, I appreciate that. I don't hate anyone. I don't hate any city. And if the Raiders now, with the way social media is, if they were in LA right now and they're trying to come to Oakland, you mean to tell me LA Raider fans wouldn't be at Raiders headquarters trying to yell at them? I really find, because if you're an LA Raider fan and tell me, no, I wouldn't go to Raiders headquarters, then I would really question your passion, not your fandom, but your passion. Because if I was in LA and the Raiders were trying to leave LA, I'd be at Raiders headquarters every single day.
Ray, we're out of time. Where can people find you? Where can they listen to you? What do you got coming up in the next few months?
I have actually a podcast coming up on Monday. You can find me at blogtalkradio.com/Dr. Death Show. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to actually integrate music and how music has affected the football. And I'm going to ask the question, name your top 3 living rappers and top 3 best hip hop songs. And also going to be discussing the Hall of Fame and how Eddie DeBartolo has already saved the Raiders.
Nice. Hey, Ray, thanks for coming on.
Follow me on Twitter, Twitter at 26Dr. Death. And thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate the dialogue, and you guys have a great show.
Thanks, Ray. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for Ray for joining us. Ray's a longtime friend dating back to our first podcast called the Sports Degos, and appreciate his insight on the situation down there in Oakland. And Josh, hopefully the Raiders find a home. Yes? What are your thoughts?
Well, they're certainly going to find a home. Where that home is obviously remains to be seen. Of course, we want to see them remain in Oakland and remain the Oakland Raiders. But I also understand it that there's a big picture going on. And, we might be fans of the Vegas Raiders, and ultimately it's not Raider City, it's Raider Nation, thankfully. And no matter where they play, I think we're going to both remain diehard silver and black fans, as I know all of Raider Nation will as well. Except unless they go to Los Angeles, then that would suck.
Or Kentucky. Josh, real quick. Think of the essence of being a fan. And I know we're running out of time. We'll cut to the next topic here, but really, we're not a fan of players because players come and go. There's a guy in the Bronx, if Von Miller came to the Raiders, we would love him, but he's on the Broncos, so we hate him, right? If John Elway was drafted by the Raiders, we would have loved him, but since he's on the Broncos, we make fun of his teeth, right? Fans aren't really fans of players. We're really fans of the owners. And what Ray was saying is Mark Davis has really kind of, to a certain group of people, and maybe this is true, I don't know enough about it to speak 100% about it. It seems like he's lied or maybe not told 100% of the truth all the time, which I imagine every owner does to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, we're fans of the ownership. We're fans of Reggie McKenzie's decision-making skills, more so than we are fans of players. Look at the Oakland Athletics, our beloved Oakland A's. 3 years ago, there was a whole new starting lineup. Now it's completely turned over, right? They just traded Reddick, they traded Donaldson, they traded Cespedes, they traded all of our favorites. So really we're a fan of Lou Wolf and Billy Beane more so than we're fans of the players. Is that weird? I always find that thought kind of weird when you really boil it down to what really are we a fan of when it comes to sports.
I think it would be cultural suicide for you to come out and to admit the truth. I don't think these owners, whether the general manager or anybody else, I don't think they're intentionally deceitful. I don't think they wake up in the morning, deciding what lies they're going to spread and tell to their fan base. But I think that they have a certain responsibility to the fiscal health of the organization. And unfortunately, a lot of times those decisions that they make, because of that responsibility, that doesn't line up with what we want as fans. And so, for Mark Davis, I don't necessarily think that he's being deceitful or he's lying to anybody. I think that in his heart of hearts, if you could tell him, okay, we're going to build you a stadium in Oakland. It's going to be this seating capacity. It's going to have these certain amount of amenities. It's going to cost you this much money. It's going to cost whatever.
30 seconds.
I think that he'd be fine with it, but I don't think that's available to him. So he's forced to make a decision to do what's best for his team. And a lot of times, again, it doesn't line up with what we want as fans.
At the end of the day, I want to see the Raiders return back to prominence, return back to glory. I want to see them hosting up another Lombardi trophy, which would be their fourth one. I want to see them be back on the winning side. I'm tired of them being the laughingstock of the league. I love what Reggie McKenzie has done, how he's cleared up cap space. And really, the Raiders are one of the sleeper teams for playoff predictions by many pundits across the nation and across the world. All right, Josh, new topic, Star Wars.
Sonny, there are few things that happen throughout the course of a calendar year in the world of entertainment that really gets me going. It could be the release of an album of one of my favorite bands. Of course, football season obviously gets me going. But in the world of entertainment, seeing a new movie, seeing something that comes out, that always is exciting to me. But especially when you talk about the world of Star Wars. And when you go back to a couple of years ago, more than that even, like 3 or 4 years ago, we were doing our show, and it came up the rumor that George Lucas was selling Lucasfilm to Disney, and that Disney was kicking around the idea of doing episodes 7, 8, and 9. And we were speculating on what that would look like when they did episode 7, having an age-appropriate Han Solo coming back into the picture, just getting excited about that prospect. So here now, fast forward all these years later, we've now already been through episode 7, and we've gotten to a point now where not only was that Star Wars movie made, but we can look forward to a new Star Wars movie every year from now until forever. Like, likely, you and I are never going to see the last Star Wars movie. We're going to die before they stop making Star Wars. That idea is amazing to me. As a kid that grew up as a Star Wars nut, and as you did, the idea that we're going to have Star Wars for the rest of our lives as a spot on the calendar every December or every May, we're going to get a Star Wars movie. It's amazing. And it's so incredibly exciting that that's coming. And so for this week's entertainment segment, I want to talk about the new Rogue One trailer that just dropped. It dropped during the Olympics this week on Thursday night. This is the second of the trailers that have come out. A lot of things have happened since that first trailer came out. They've started a lot of reshoots on the movie. I think that they're changing a lot of the tone of the flick from, super gritty war drama to being a little more Star Warsy. It's kind of hard to define what exactly Star Warsy is, but there's a certain level of humor and romance or whatever. There's more elements to it than just, gritty war movie. Anyway, so I think that they reshot the movie to kind of change the tone up a little bit. But that said, the new trailer is out, and it's amazing.
What I like about it, it looks like old Star Wars. What I loved about, which is, I guess, what's called the seventh movie that came out recently. What was the name of it? I don't even remember the name.
The Force Awakens episodes.
Okay, The Force Awakens. I watched it twice. I have a very forgetful memory. I loved it. I loved that it was so far removed from the Jar Jar Binks, Anakin tiptoeing through tulips with what's her face. I didn't like it almost looked too pretty, if you will. And the Star Wars universe to me has always been gritty, rough, greasy. I don't know what kind of words, in space. And I loved that. And the new Star Wars movie was a throwback to that, I thought, and it was awesome. When, spoiler alert, when Han Solo gets killed, it's just like, what the heck? It had kind of the crazy twists and stuff like that, that when Darth Vader revealed he was Luke's father and stuff, So I loved that. Watching this trailer takes me right back to that world where it's the same look, had that feel to it. It looks like they're building another weapon. I don't know. It seemed like it. So one of my questions for you is what's different about the Rogue One movies versus the traditional, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and stuff like that? Because there's a difference, right? Every other year it's following a different story pattern, or can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so what they're calling them, originally they announced them as the anthology films. So there's the episode movies, right? There is as you mentioned, there's 1 through 7. This is the first time that we're getting a Star Wars movie that's separate from the timeline of Anakin Skywalker. So basically episodes 1 through 6 followed the Anakin Skywalker story. Episode 7 was kind of a continuation of that because we see Luke and we see, Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, who is Anakin's grandson. So we're seeing that same timeline unfolding. What this is and what the upcoming, there's going to be a Han Solo movie. There's rumors of a Yoda standalone movie. There's rumors of an Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone movie, which might have Ewan McGregor come back. Like there's some really cool other ideas out there. And what they are is that basically they're just ways to expand upon stories within those, now 7 films. So if you think back to Star Wars A New Hope, which is episode 4, right? Which to us growing up was Star Wars.
Episode 1.
It was Star Wars. That was
Star
the
Wars,
original Star Wars. That opening crawl where it describes the Imperials and what they've done in their creation of the Death Star and the obtaining of and the rebels obtaining the plans for the Death Star and all that. That crawl is basically what Rogue One is. That's the plot of Rogue One. Okay.
Okay.
So if you think of it in those terms, so technically Rogue One is a prequel. It's going to be a little confusing to some of the more casual fans, being that we just got episode 7. Now this is not episode 8. Now we're rewinding.
So this is 3.5.
That's exactly right. Actually, it's more like 3.9 because basically this is going to run right up until about 10 minutes before A New Hope starts. Like we're going to run right up until that point to where we see that famous shot of that Star Destroyer coming overhead and taking over what's the Tantive 4 and Princess Leia's the Rebel Blockade Runner or whatever that thing's called. But anyways, it's going to take us right up to that moment. So this is how the rebels obtain the plans to the Death Star. So now, after watching the trailer, there's a couple of things going on that I noticed is that, and there's actually a lot. I've actually took some notes on here if we get into the weeds on it at all. But there's two, to me, plot points of what's going to be going on in Rogue One. Number one is going to be they're obtaining the plans to the Death Star, which is ultimately, we know that's what Princess Leia put into R2-D2.
So that is the weapon they talked about in the
Yes,
in the
they're talking about the Death Star.
Okay.
But
I thought it was a different weapon.
no, they're talking about the building, the creation of the Death Star. Now, here's the other, to me, I think the other part of the plot of this movie is going to be, this is just me speculating, there's a big part of Star Wars lore in that universe about something called a Kyber crystal, okay? The Kyber crystal is what Jedi go and seek to get their own crystal, to build their own lightsaber. All right, and that's part of their training. That's like the culmination of their training is the building of their own lightsaber. And they have this, there's books and there's TV shows that have had episodes dedicated to this concept of Jedi's basically going on a journey, on a search for this particular crystal that identifies with them, and then that's the one that they use to build their lightsaber. Okay, I think another plot of this movie is going to be the Imperials searching for a giant Kyber crystal, and that's what powers the big laser on the Death Star that blows up Alderaan in the beginning of A New Hope.
Oh, interesting.
So I think that there's going to be because look, we know how this movie ends, right? Like we've seen Star Wars. We know Luke Skywalker blows it up. We know it being the Death Star. So we know how this ends. We know how the story goes. So there's got to be something else in there that's going to give a win. And I say that in finger quotes because we're on a podcast. There's got to be a win for the Imperials in there. And I think it's them obtaining the Kyber crystal. So anyways, I think there's going to be a numerous different things going on. And it's not, the trailer is giving us enough, but it's not giving us everything. Something that I do want to mention though, you said the first three movies, episodes 1 through 3, when they went back to Jar Jar Binks' era of Star Wars, it was too polished. It was too clean. That was absolutely intentional by George Lucas because he was trying to invoke basically the 50s, right? Like if you look at a lot of the ships and a lot of the things
were happy, things were okay.
Yes, the ships had big wings on.
Balance with the Force.
Yes, everything's lovely. So, and then as we got further along in the series, it got grittier in tone and it got more lived in. Okay. And that's what it's referred to as is the lived in universe, that style of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi. And then, as you mentioned, it continued on in The Force Awakens. I think they absolutely nailed it in terms of that lived in universe for Rogue One. I think that to me, when you watch that trailer and in the first trailer, when you heard that Death Star alarm, or you just saw,
you're
the
there.
weathered ship.
Yes. Yeah, you're instantly there.
Yes, absolutely. The Star Destroyer, everything just looks fantastic. If this movie does anything, I think it absolutely captures the imagery of that first movie. And that's truly, right, what we fell in love with as kids. Yeah, we loved it. Sure, because if you think about the plot of the first movie, it's pretty basic. That's way before they get into, sure, there's some Force stuff between Obi-Wan and Luke and all that, but that's way before Yoda. That's way before all that stuff. And, Luke and Leia being sisters and Luke, I'm your father. And that's way before.
Sister and brother, not sister.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. So, but you know what I mean? Like that's way before all that. So the plot of episode 4 is pretty simple. It's, it's the hero's journey. It's the farm boy. He's all of that. So to go back to that now, I think it's really going to capture a lot of the audiences. I think it's really going to capture, frankly, people like yourself that are more casual fans of it because it will rekindle all that stuff in you from when you were a kid.
So the end of episode 3 was my favorite one. That was Revenge of the Sith, right?
Episode 3 is Revenge of the Sith. That's correct.
That's where Anakin went all Anakin and killed everybody and said, I'm in control now, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Went nuts, right? And that ends with him getting his legs cut off, and that ends with the mask being put on him, right? Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, I guess they're genius the way they set this up, because that I guess is a really good transition to when Rogue One comes out to put us to that gritty world. Because if they just went happy, boom, dark, that'd be kind of a really stiff transition, if you will, So the fact that they had that in there to transition into that gritty, dark Star Wars universe that we all know, sounds like pretty good planning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the way that George Lucas shot Episode 3 at the end, I'm with you. That's some of my favorite parts of that movie. Some of the dialogue is weak, and they really are through all the prequels. But again, to go back to the imagery and the imagery of Anakin and Obi-Wan squaring off there on Mustafar on the lava planet at the end, and Anakin, you are my brother, you are the chosen one, and all that. Just the passion. Ewan McGregor is phenomenal. If there's any high point to the acting in any of those movies, it's by far Ewan. And it's just the way he delivers those lines, and then defeats Darth Vader, and then put Anakin back together in the suit, and the final shots where you see him and Palpatine are on the deck and of the spaceship. I forget if I guess it's a Star Destroyer. I don't think it's the Executor, but whatever it is, and they're overlooking the building of the Death Star. Yeah, absolutely. Like, they're putting this sucker right in between there and when we see again that opening shot of Episode 4. So I think it's going to be great. I think that I don't know how compelling it's going to be from a story perspective, because again, we know how it's going to start, we know how it's going to finish. But maybe we'll meet some cool characters along the way. And again, definitely the imagery of it, seeing just in the trailer, the shots of the Star Destroyers in atmosphere, hovering over something what looks like it could be like a Jedi temple. Seeing, I'll tell you what is fun to me, and maybe to you as well, having played a little bit of it. I love the Battlefront game. The Star Wars Battlefront game is fantastic.
It's okay.
Okay. All right. But some of the shots in the trailer are straight up from the game. When you see the one guy shoulder up the rocket launcher and shoot it up and have it hit the AT-AT, that's sweet, dude. Like that kind of stuff, I'm like, holy crap, that's like right out of the game.
So you mentioned characters. Are we going to know any of the characters in this movie? Are we going to see Leia? We're not going to see those guys, are we? We're not going to see Leia and Luke and Han and Chewie and all them, right?
Well, that's a big source of speculation. Gareth Edwards, the director of the movie, has come out and said that you're not going to see Han. That's not going to happen. I think we might see a shot of the Millennium Falcon or maybe Chewie or something like that, just as like a walkthrough, brief cameo type thing. We're going to see Vader, or I'm hoping, just as we way back when hoped to see Han Solo being Han Solo in Episode 7.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we're going to see Darth Vader be Darth Vader here in Rogue One. And if you think about it, we're going to see Vader in all of his glory. This isn't going to be Darth Vader.
This is prime time Vader, yeah.
This is probably, he's not going to be meandering around the Death Star giving orders. This is going to be Vader on the battlefield with his lightsaber going out there and kicking ass.
This is fresh off getting his legs cut off, pissed off. This is him at his peak.
This is him at his height of his power. Yeah, so this should be pretty cool. Like, all a semblance of Anakin Skywalker is now gone. This will just be straight up Darth Vader out there being the villain and the bad guy that we come to expect. So I think that so we'll definitely see him. Yeah, we might catch an R2. If there's a trivia question for you, what characters have been in all 7 movies? Well, it's R2D2 and C-3PO.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Kenny Baker, who passed away today, sadly, at the age of 83. The guy that played R2D2 inside.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Sad news
today.
Today, yeah. Kenny Baker passed away, so rest in peace there. 83 years old. He had a good run. Should we all be so blessed to see 83?
Sure.
But yeah, so I think so. We may see something like that. Could we see a young Leia at the end? Getting the plans to the Death Star or getting the transmission of them. Yeah, I could see something like that. There's been, Billie Lourd is Carrie Fisher's daughter in real life, and she looks a lot like her. And she's like 23 years old or something, so pretty close to the age that Carrie Fisher was when she played Leia. So there's been rumors of maybe her making an appearance here and there, but that's kind of wide
speculation.
Well,
because in the Star Wars story, during the time of Rogue One, that's when Luke and Leia were shipped off to go with the aunt and the uncle and Padawan, right, or something like that.
Well, Luke will be, again, this will be like the year leading up to, when we first see him on Tatooine, and then Leia will be, a princess on Alderaan, and that's the other character I was going to mention to you that we know for sure is coming back is Bail Organa, and Bail Organa is, he was played by Jimmy Smits in the prequels, And there's pictures of him, like it's funny, like they're like pictures of the Loch Ness Monster of Bigfoot. They're like blurry pictures of him in the background. You know what I mean? Like people are combing over this thing like the Zapruder film, trying to find shots of Jimmy Smith, but it's him. So we know he's coming back. So we might see, a young Princess Leia in it, something like that. But other than that, as a main character, no. Now the only other one, and I'll give you one last one. The only other one could be Grand Moff Tarkin. We might see a computer-generated version of Peter Cushing, and there's a lot of actors out there. Stephen Stanton is the voice actor's name it's before he's Grand Moff. He's like Admiral Tarkin on the Clone Wars, and he's also been on Star Wars Rebels. He does a dead-on impression of Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin. It's phenomenal. So they could get a Stephen Stanton maybe to come back, do the voice, and then do this completely computer-generated version of Tarkin. But they've downplayed any of those rumors from the get-go. And maybe as an opportunity to hide that kind of a reveal, because that would be such a big deal. But that's one of the rumors about why this movie cost so much money, was that they spent so much to get this thing accurate and to have a photorealistic computer-generated Peter Cushing. I forget how old he was when they filmed The New Hope, but to go back to that. So yes.
Are we going to see multiple 3.5s, 4.5s, 5.5s? Is this what they're going to do moving forward?
Yeah, I think we're going to see that every other year. So this year we're getting Rogue One. Next year we'll get Episode 8. So we'll go back to Rey and Finn and Poe Dameron and, now Luke. And Kylo Ren and Snoke and all that stuff. So we'll get back to all that story in Episode 8, and that'll be in 2017. And then in 2018, that's when we're going to get Han Solo. So now it's going to be a young Han Solo movie. So the actor's name is Alden Ehrenreich. He was most recently in a movie called Hail Caesar. I don't know if he's
30 seconds.
So yes, we're going to get a different movie every other year outside of the episodic films. And again, man, we're getting a new Star Wars movie every year. It's a good time to be a fan.
I'm a casual fan, not a diehard fanboy like yourself. I appreciate knowing people like you so I can get caught up, because I do love the story. And I'm hyped. I can't wait. So it'll be pretty awesome. All right, Murph. Family talk. All right, Josh, Murph, same thing. Last week, I made mention of the fact that my wife was pregnant, and she was going to give birth next March 2017. Well, that's not going to happen. She ended up having a miscarriage, as you know. So it's been kind of a rough week in regards to family. I took Sunday night, kind of when it happened. We record on Saturday, so this is about a week ago. Late Sunday night, she was kind of having small complications. We went to the doctor about a week before, and the doctor it was her first ultrasound. The doctor didn't feel a heartbeat, and the doctor thought maybe she was just a little more early than anticipated. That was my first kind of red flag that maybe something was up. And then there was some stuff going on that made Rachel think there was other stuff going on as well. So in my head, I'd kind of already been not like preparing myself, but thinking about the possibility of a miscarriage. So then Sunday night, when it actually happened, it was pretty intense, man. It's like she wakes me up, around 2, and we have 2 small boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and she basically says, we need to go to the hospital right now, something's happening. So we took off, and we wrangle the boys up in the middle of the night and go to the hospital and get her in there, and she goes back, and I'm sitting there in the lobby with my 2 boys, and it was kind of an interesting moment because they have no idea what's going on, they're 3 and 1, so to a certain degree, they're like, sweet, I get to be woken up in the middle of the night, so they're all kind of Dominic on the way there is, like, oh, look at the lights and look at this and look at that, he was kind of having the time of his life, and at the hospital we're reading books, and meanwhile mom's in the back and just going through it and stuff, and it was an interesting insight into being a parent that I really haven't maybe experienced to this depth yet before is how much protection we give to kids as parents. because to me and my wife, Rachel, not our worlds were shattering, but a pretty devastating thing was happening. And yet to my kids, I still have to make sure, they have food, they're occupied, they're not running amok and stuff like that, So it was a really interesting situation in the hospital of sitting there and they're trying to laugh. And so, I'm trying to laugh with them, but inside, my heart's aching, And then on the way back, we ended up dropping the kids off at mom's and then we got released several hours later. So on the way back, we're trying to explain to Dom, our 3-year-old, what had happened and stuff, and what happened with the baby and how the baby died and there wouldn't be no more baby. Because all along we've been telling him, hey, mommy's carrying a baby, and Dom was certain it was a girl and stuff, and he'd always ask about her, and that was really difficult to talk to the 3-year-old about it. It's 7:00 in the morning. I literally had 1 hour of sleep and 24-hour period. My wife's, she's an emotional wreck, and so was I. And so he's asking questions, he's like, did she die? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, well, did she have a head? And we're like, yeah, and he's like, did she have a forehead? And it was nuts, man, because here's this 3-year-old trying to wrap his mind around it, and then you're trying to explain it to him like he can understand it, but yet you're in this emotional roller coaster yourself. It was just a really strange and difficult time. And then after 5 days of reflection, and I took the next couple of days off of work and stuff, and we had a lot of family come down, which is really huge. The just the essence of family in these kind of situations is awesome. After 5 days of reflection, it just makes me realize like how precious life is, and how precious each of our kids are. Like we have 2 boys, and for their pregnancies, there was no complications whatsoever and stuff. I mean, they were smooth sailing. Quick labors and stuff. My wife didn't even get any drugs or anything when she was in the hospital, just straight natural. She's a beast. And then for this to have it just all of a sudden it's just over. It's just so final and stuff too. It's just 5 days earlier we're like, yeah, we're pregnant, great. We're making plans. We're starting to go through names. As I called you up and was talking about names. And then to have it all of a sudden just it's over. It's done. It's a strange way to kind of get slapped in the face back to whatever, but after reflecting on it for a week, it makes you grateful. It makes you grateful for the kids you have, and man, I really feel for people who have never had children and have a miscarriage and don't have that to fall back on. As me and my wife talked about over the week, what if this would have been our first attempt at having a child, having a miscarriage, and we know people who've gone through this, and it just gives you so much empathy for them to not have any kids and to have this happen, and to then start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with him? Should we even try it again? What if it happens again? And just all those questions would just flood you and stuff. And luckily we had our 2 boys to love on and to remind us how blessed we are, even though they come and jump on your bed and kick you in the nuts at 7 in the morning and stuff, and you want to throw them off the bed. It's a blessing to have that, and in no way would you ever trade that for anything in the world, So my week has been dealing with that, man. Sorry to be a sad sack, but at the end of the day, it definitely makes you grateful for even my own life, my kids' life, and how fragile human life really is. Not just while we're here, not just getting in a car accident, driving to work one morning, or getting a heart attack or getting cancer, but even getting here, and then just doing the research on miscarriages in the past and how prevalent childbirth or how prevalent miscarriages have been. Like I didn't know miscarriages are really common. Like my best friends had one. Rachel's sisters had one. Lots of different people we know have had them. And then you look at the research from just human history and how many children just didn't live through childbirth and stuff. And so it just makes me appreciate human life that much more, my own life and my kids' lives as well and stuff. So that's my stuff for family this week.
Well, it's heartbreaking to hear that. It was heartbreaking when I, heard the news from you originally, but hearing you walk through the story and kind of go through it, it's heartbreaking. It's you just feel for you and your family, and I applaud you, Sonny, for bringing something like that and willing to be open on our podcast about something like that. That's one of the reasons that I think that we decided to do the show, was to kind of expand up from, just being a sports show or even just an entertainment show. And it makes you realize and helps you keep in perspective what's really important. That at the end of the day, it's fun and entertaining to talk about your team's stadium issues or a new movie coming out. But at the end of the day, what's really important is the people that you're surrounded with, and in the support that we can give to one another based on the troubles and the tribulations that we go through, and nothing is greater than the loss of a child. I mean, that's absolutely your biggest fear as a parent is a loss of a child, and we in our family have others that have gone through that as they've gotten older in life. People that were around and part of our families for many, many years before they lost their lives too early. And then also hearing, this account that you have of having a miscarriage. And it helps you bring into focus, what's really important. And I just applaud your willingness to come on here and talk about something like that. Cause that takes a lot of balls to come on here and to talk openly about that. And I would hope that it's somehow therapeutic and if for you, because I think that, whether we have 12 people listen to us or 12,000 people listen to us, that maybe if there's somebody that can kind of relate to it, that maybe that helps draw some perspective for them as well. Even if it's just knowing that there's a shared feeling amongst human beings out there, that there's just the comfort in that. So anyway, so thank you for doing that. And it's awful news, but if there is any positivity to be found in that, I appreciate your all's willingness to look at it and to consider it, even because that's just, even to consider positivity in anything surrounding that scenario is just tough.
Well, yeah, man, for sure. I mean, if we're going to do a podcast, talk about family, you got to talk about it,
So let me ask you what you touched on, something that I have a shared experience with a few times with you is children in the hospital. When there are now, something that's that heavy going on and splitting, like you said, that essentially have to split your personality. Because, as you mentioned, inside you're a mess, but you can't show that face to your 3-year-old or your 1-year-old's. He's just doing 1-year-old things, but the 3-year-old is hip enough. He understands that there is something going on, and that's got to be one of the biggest challenges in the moment. I'm not talking about overall as a parent, but in the moment, and to split yourself up like that, to be able to provide security to your kid, because that's what kids need, right? They need to be fed. Yeah, they need to be clothed.
Safe and secure.
Of course, they need to be loved, but they got to feel safe. And it would be so easy for Dom to, in that moment, in that environment, to not feel safe. So you as his dad take that as an opportunity to make sure that he's comforted. Is that one of the more challenging things for you? Did you find in dealing with that in the hospital like that, like you said, to protect him?
Yeah, and it wasn't so much that like we were trying to shield him or coddle him or put him in a bubble so that way he wouldn't experience. I don't have any problems in letting him know dad's sad or dad's happy or dad's angry and stuff like that. I think that's just life, and I think if we coddle our children, they'll never understand how to deal with that kind of stuff because we're modeling, right? They're watching no matter what we do and stuff, So I wasn't trying to coddle him, but at the same time, I definitely wasn't. There's just certain needs that have to be met, and I think you hit on the head. They have to know they're safe and secure, and when you put them in a state of panic or a state of trauma, that has long-lasting implications. And with my work in counseling, the trauma-impacted brain is very detrimental to children. It's very detrimental to adults. It's the cause of so many lifelong issues in regards to stress or anxiety or depression or PTSD, substance abuse issues. So much of all of those things really we do a bad thing. We diagnose somebody as being substance dependent, or we diagnose somebody with depression or anxiety. Really, those things are symptoms of what's happened most of the time what's happened as a child, and most of it comes around this thing called trauma. And so through studying all that and being fresh, at a certain schools and still in school and being a counselor, what I was mindful of is I didn't want Dom to have a traumatic experience that would alter kind of the way he grows up and he thinks things and would have an impact later on in life. And so yes, talking to him about the event in a certain way, normalizing it, not normalizing it like it's an everyday thing, it's no big deal, but talking about it with him, not hiding it from him, so that way he's like curious about it, and not, Dom, the world's going to end, your mom you had a miscarriage, not traumatizing him with it, but saying, hey, we're at the hospital, mommy was having her baby, baby didn't live, baby's in heaven, and talking to him about it, so that way he's able to process it, in his own right and stuff like that. Because the last thing we want to do as parents is traumatize our kids. And so if we have control over that, I mean, that's definitely, you got to be on your A game, But then it's 3:00 in the morning and you're running on empty. And so yeah, it was challenging, man. It was challenging.
Well, again, man, I thank you for sharing that with us and being open and transparent, and something like that. That's definitely a tough thing. And to put yourself, put your kids' emotional well-being ahead of yours, I think is something that often gets overlooked as parents, that, sometimes we kind of get caught up in our own mess. And, obviously in a situation like what you guys were in, it may be interpreted as being, well, yeah, that's easy. Of course you're going to do that. But just in everyday generalities, it's the willingness to always put your kids' consideration ahead of yours. I think that's a big deal. And I think that's something that, as parents, we can overlook relatively easy, especially, like I said, when we get caught up in our dailies, that, until they, and I don't know, you tell me, what's the age, where, you become more independent of that and it's less of a necessity for your parent to provide that sense of security. Is it, are you like teenager years, or when is that part of childhood come to an end?
Well, it depends on who you read and which theory you subscribe to and stuff like that. One of the popular ones is, I think his name is, I should have looked at this beforehand, but I think his name is Adler. And I think what he talks about is, he says there's stages of development your whole entire life. Every few years you're going through a new phase of life. Throughout your whole youth years, throughout your whole young years and adolescent years, you're always testing the boundaries of your own anonymity by means of, you watch a kid walk for the first time, right? He'll take one step, turn around, look at his mommy and daddy. They learn how to run. They run. They turn around and look at mommy and daddy. In a way, they're running into the world, feeling free, but turning around and making sure they're still safe by the signal to you, and then you give them the okay, tell them they can keep running, tell them to come back. And so they're always kind of, that boundary is always becoming extended. And then from what I've read, and if I'm getting this wrong, and I apologize, but in your teenage years, one of the big searches is identity and anonymity. That's where it becomes really huge, to where you're learning how to be on your own. You want to be on your own. That's why so many teenagers, Mom, don't drop me off in front of the school no more. Drop me off 3 blocks away and stuff, That's where that whole thing comes into play and stuff like that, where you'd much rather hang out with your friends on a Friday night than hang out with your parents on a Friday night, which I'm sure you're experiencing with your now teenage son, right? Have you experienced any of that so far?
Well, that's really funny that you said that, because I didn't expect to lead into this, but yes, I have experienced that, and I experienced it this past Tuesday at approximately 5:45 out on the football field. My son is in the 8th grade, my oldest, and he's playing middle school football for the first time. He's played youth football, but this is the first time that he's played a sport as part of his school. So he is in the warm-up line. He's a lineman, and he's with his other linemen, and they're in the doing warm-ups in the end zone, and they're doing karaoke, they're doing stretches, they're doing high knees, they're doing the typical things that you would see a football team do in their warm-up lines. So I go down to the end zone on the other side of the little 4-foot cyclone fence there, overlooking the field. And normally when I would see my kid on the field of play, and of course, and I've coached him for a majority of the things that he's done, but even at times when I wasn't his coach, I would wave over at him and I'd get a hey dad or an I love you or a whatever, I'd get a wave and the sign language sign of I love you back, whatever. So I'm watching over, I'm watching him in the warm up line. I watch him do a few things and he looks over at me as he's coming back my way and we make eye contact. It's hard to tell with his helmet, but we make eye contact and I just kind of put my hand straight out and I went, hey pal. And I got what's up for my first time ever as a dad. And I got the what's up. I got the silent what's up. I'm talking about the nod.
Oh, no.
The chin up, that what's up. It's a podcast, so you can't see what I'm doing. But you know what I'm doing. Every guy that's ever walked down a hallway in high school knows what I'm doing with my head when I say giving the what's up. And my 13-year-old gave me the what's up. And I ran back over to the stands where our Uncle Mark is sitting and my son's grandfather. And I go, you'll never believe what just happened. And they go, what happened? Tristan just started? And I'm like, no, he just what's up me for the first time. And they started cracking up. They're like, because he didn't want to show. Right, that was a potential weakness, right? You can't shoot an I love you, Dad, when you're trying to be a tough guy out on the football field. So I thought that was funny. So yes, so the first time ever I've seen that little bit of that distancing. And now, it's funny when you get in the car or whatever afterwards and it's, nothing's changed. The kid, he's still willing to express himself openly. And, thankfully, we're part of that I love you, Dad generation and my kids reciprocate that. But in that moment on the football field, no, it was what's up.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there you go. He's with the pack of wolves, man. He can't look soft, right? Especially on the football field, on the gridiron and stuff, So that's interesting. All right, we got 30 seconds left. Anything else you want to say in regards to family for this week?
No, just thankful and blessed, and I hope that anybody listening to us feels that way as well. Things aren't obviously always the way that we want them to be, but if you can find comfort in the way things are, that's I think ultimately that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I would say that the big lesson I got through all this is just how precious life is. Not so much that we get to live days. You mentioned earlier the actor from Star Wars got to live 83 years. Just getting here in and of itself sometimes is a journey that we never even remember. We're not even really cognizant yet. So life is precious for sure. All right, Josh, that's another episode 2 in the bag. We'd like to thank our tens of listeners who tuned in last week for the inaugural Degos on 3 podcast. We'll be dropping the podcast every Tuesday. We can now get it on iTunes. Thanks for setting that up, Josh. Look for us on iTunes. Degos on 3. Degos is spelled like Degos, just like Legos with a D on the number 3. We're on iTunes. We're on Libsyn.com. Also on Facebook. Join our Facebook group. Go to Facebook, type in Degos on 3. Join our group. We can talk about stuff during the week. Would love to hear your guys' stories and anything you want to add or contribute to the show. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, Degos on3. Is again the number, Degos on3@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @DegosOn3. And anything else, Josh?
I fear nothing, for all is as the Force wills it.
Thanks for checking out our podcast. Tune in each Tuesday morning for a new episode. Downloadable on iTunes and Stitcher. Facebook Degos on 3. Twitter Degos on 3. And DegosOn3.Libsyn.com.
You want to play Star Wars in a little bit?
Well, yeah.